Your trade deadline may be approaching soon. Here are some players that you can buy low and trade for right now. We're going to start it off with DJ Moore. DJ Moore you can get pretty cheap right now. I know there's a lot of worry. He just came off of a really bad performance against Cincinnati, and he's been dealing with quarterback issues. So, a lot of uncertainty. The manager is probably extremely disappointed on the season. However, he's about to go against Atlanta, who has been schedule adjusted the worst defense against receivers. 2 weeks ago, he also played Atlanta, and PJ Walker threw for over 300 yards, and he got about 25 half PPR points. So, blew it up against Atlanta. He's about to go play Atlanta again. He also has a pretty good playoff schedule, which features Pittsburgh, who is the other amazing defense that you want to target with receivers. Both Atlanta and Pittsburgh are allowing way more points than any other defense in the league against receivers, and he's going to get them week 1 of the playoffs, and then they get Detroit second week of the playoffs, and then Tampa Bay, who's actually not been very good recently. So, really good playoff schedule. I think he's a player that you can target if you're looking for a flex who can offer you some upside, and honestly, maybe a little bit of consistency if the quarterback situation gets a little better. So we know PJ Walker had a bad week last week, just disastrous 9-yard performance where he got benched. But Sam Darnold could be coming into the mix and maybe can stabilize the situation. Through it all, though, he hasn't really been horrible. He's yet to get less than 6 targets on a game. And although, yes, he's been disappointing, PJ Walker over the last 3 weeks still has made it better for DJ Moore. So if you can buy low right now, I know there's a lot of uncertainty. I'm not paying up for him because he will have these bad weeks with these quarterback situation, but you can get him extremely cheap, and I think he can get you some really good weeks.
Yep. All right, my first buy low is going to be Marquise Brown of the Arizona Cardinals. He is close to returning off of his foot injury from the IR. He is eligible to return after this week's game, so not week 10, but week 11. I've heard some rumblings around the facility that he feels great. He's no longer in a walking boot, and that he's looking forward to practicing. He's been tossing the ball around. I mean, nothing crazy, no running, no sprinting yet, because he can't do that because he's on IR still. But they are at least rumblings that he's going to come off next week. So now's the time to buy if you can. Some people may be worried about D-Hop being there, eating up the targets. Look, even while D-Hop has been active, there's still been other producers in this offense. Rondale Moore has put up double-digit PPR points 2 out of the 3 games that DeAndre Hopkins has been active. So I definitely think that once Hollywood comes back, he will definitely still be fantasy relevant. DeAndre Hopkins does take the number 1 cornerback, so Marquise Brown will no longer have to face them like he did the first 6 games of the year, where he was the wide receiver 6 on the season at that point. So when he's going up against number 2 cornerbacks and the defense aren't scheming to take him away, they're instead scheming to take DeAndre Hopkins away, I do think he will have some monster games. I think you'll see him use deep more rather than a check down guy like he was used previously. So I would try to trade cheap for Marquise Brown. Again, don't give up anything too crazy, but if you can give up around a wide receiver 20-ish range, maybe like, I don't know, a Cortland Sutton or maybe even a Chris Godwin,
Brandon Ayuk,
someone that hasn't.
Probably
yeah, Brandon Ayuk is a good one. Jacoby Myers, guys around that range. If you could do that, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and like you said, he will definitely be able to produce with DeAndre Hopkins. If the manager is worried about that because Hopkins has been on fire, then you might be able to get him even cheaper, because realistically, nobody's going to look at this Hopkins situation and think that Marquise Brown is going to go back to exactly what he was. And if that's extremely worrying for the manager, then you might be able to get him even cheaper than what we're suggesting. So just depends. Go feel out some offers. I think he's a really good high upside flex play, similar to what I was saying about DJ Moore. Another player to buy low, here's a running back. It's Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor comes with some risk, and we're going to fully admit that. And there's a chance it doesn't work out. But there's not a lot of running backs who have top 10 upside. Jonathan Taylor's absolutely one of those. He has top 5 upside. We've seen it. And of the guys that are in my top 15 right now for the rest of season, he's going to be the cheapest. So if you've been struggling at running back, and I mean struggling, and you need a solution and you want to buy low, I think it could be worth it to take on some risk because of the upside he provides. This is simply a a risky move that you might need to make if you are a losing team right now who needs to, make some improvements at the running back spot. I think he practiced on Wednesday, and he hopefully will get healthy. And if he can, then I still believe in the talent of Jonathan Taylor, and I'm always going to trade for talented players like that. I know they've got a whole coaching situation that wants to establish the run, so that's at least some good news. And I think Jonathan Taylor's, he is by far the best running back on this roster, so never get that twisted. He's always going to be the lead dog, and he's going to get a ton of work. So I think he can get it together if he can stay healthy.
Yep, I agree. Definitely pick him up if you can. I don't think his ankle injury was too terribly bad. He finished the game in which he was injured, and he's already practicing not even 10 days later. So he's up running on it, doing all the running back drills in practice. So it seems like he's going to be okay. So I would definitely trade for him if you can. My next pick is actually going to be 2 picks, and that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers, both Diontae Johnson and George Pickens. So they're coming out of their bye week. So sometimes you can kind of get a discount on a guy coming out of their bye week because people tend to forget how they were playing previously. They lost Chase Claypool from this offense, so that should be an increase in targets for both of them. They also have the easiest remaining wide receiver schedule of almost anybody in the league. I believe it's them and the Denver Broncos that have the top 2 easiest rest of season schedule for receivers. And also, they're playing with a rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett. So coming out of a bye week, getting those days to really get caught up and for him to settle down, learn some things, learn some different pieces of the offense, I think that's a really good and understated facet. So they really got 2 weeks for him to settle down, get chemistry with these 2 specific players, and try to work a way forward. Diontae Johnson leads the NFL in targets without a touchdown. He has, I think it's like 76 or 80 targets on the year and does not have a touchdown. So that's going to change. Whenever we've said it for Mixon, we've said it for Austin Eckler this year, we've said it for multiple other people. Whenever you're getting the workload, touchdowns will come. It's a sticky stat. It's not a sticky stat. It's very volatile. Some games, like we just saw Joe Mixon, he went 5 weeks without a touchdown, and then he just got 5 touchdowns in one game. So touchdowns will come to the players who get the ball the most, and he has got the most targets in the NFL without a touchdown so far. So I do see positive regression coming in that sense.
Yeah, pick your favorite Steelers receiver. I know that Pickens has some upside that is yet to see. So if you want to shoot for the moon with Pickens and hope that he has that chemistry there, then I totally understand that. But Diontae is sort of a volume guy that I think will get you some PPR value. So buy them very cheap because they shouldn't cost too much. So don't pay up, but they can get you some consistent value. Mike Evans is another player that I think could be due for some positive touchdown regression, like we mentioned. You were saying just a few weeks ago, we told you guys to trade for Kamara because he hadn't got a lot of touchdowns, but he's got a lot of touches. And I think the same can be said for Mike Evans. And he's done it his whole career. He's been a touchdown guy. He gets a lot of touchdown looks, and he has this year as well. But he's on kind of a drought, and he's got a lot less touchdowns than expected. So I think the second half of the year could be there could be a lot of touchdowns in line for Mike Evans. He's been just quietly putting up really good fantasy numbers, and he's been a low-end wide receiver 1, and I'm buying him just as that, a low-end wide receiver 1 with the upside to win you a week if he gets a few touchdowns, 2 or 3, which he can do. He absolutely can do, and he has in the past, and he'll do it again. But he's actually been pretty consistent. This last game against the Rams was his lowest yard outage on the year. Other than that, and one other game, he's yet to get under 60 yards. So he's actually been pretty consistent from a yards perspective, and Brady continues to look his way. If they can get some touchdowns going, he's going to have a lot more upside. And he's actually had higher volume than he's had pretty much any year in his career, which is surprising. Over the past 3 weeks, he's seen 15, 11, and 11 targets. If he can keep up a volume pace like that, he's going to be amazing for fantasy. Last week, the targets just didn't really turn into catches, only had 5 catches, but I think there's going to be more in store for Mike Evans. So if you've been struggling at the wide receiver 1 position and you don't have that guy, then I think you could buy him as a low-end wide receiver 1, and he could, be that for your team.
Yeah. The Buccaneers can't run the ball, so their only option is to pass. You're seeing Brady throw more passes or averaging more passes per game than he has pretty much any point in his career because the Bucs just cannot run the ball. Both running backs, their line, they can't do it. So they're throwing a ton. So either him or Godwin would both be good buys due to their target volume percentages. My last buy is going to be Justin Herbert. If you've drafted Justin Herbert or traded for him or whatever, you're probably unhappy thus far with his production. He was drafted as a top 6-ish quarterback, most of the time top 3, and he's currently the QB 12 on the year, which isn't great, but also it's not killing you. And obviously, everyone knows Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been out. Keenan Allen pretty much the entire year, Mike Williams the past few weeks. But Justin Herbert's schedule gets extremely favorable. After this week, they played the 49ers, which isn't a good matchup. But after the 49ers, they get 4 or 5 straight games against teams that are the top 7 most favorable matchup for quarterbacks. So he has a 5-week stretch playing the top 7 best defenses for fantasy points. And I would also expect at some point in that stretch that both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams will come back and will play. They called Keenan Allen day-to-day. I don't know how truthful that is. Sometimes day-to-day means they can play. Sometimes day-to-day means they're out for 2 more weeks, in the case of Cliff Kingsbury. But really, I don't think Herbert could perform any worse than what he's doing right now. I know Austin Eckler is getting a ton of touchdowns. I do expect that to disperse a little bit once the receivers get healthy. They might lean on them slightly more. Just, touchdowns fluctuate some. So I would expect Herbert to start producing at more like a top 8, top 5-ish clip per game once he hits that really easy part of his schedule and once his receivers get healthy. So if there's a manager that's not satisfied, which there probably is because he's not been performing well at all, they've already had their bye week, so that's a plus if you have a quarterback that's currently not had his bye week yet. So I would trade for him kind of cheap. If you could trade a quarterback plus, a bench player or a low end flex, I would definitely do so in order to take the chance at having that high upside Justin Herbert that we all thought we were going to have coming into the season.
Yeah, if you can wait for the weapons to get healthy, then he'll be a smash play. I mean, he's still getting the yards. It's just the touchdowns really haven't been there over the last few weeks. Eckler does have 6 rushing touchdowns over the last 5 games, so that probably has a lot to do with it. But again, the main problem is that the Mike Williams, when he comes back, I mean, he's the touchdown guy. I think he's going to help him get a lot more involved, and hopefully he should be back in a couple weeks. So if you can wait that long, then I think Herbert is a good buy low. All right, Chris Olave, another player that you can buy low on right now. Again, talked about it a couple weeks ago, but everything still remains. He looks like the best rookie wide receiver so far this year, and all the metrics are there. The volume is there. He looks amazing on the field. His targets per route run and his yards per route run are amazing. He's demanding the ball when he's running routes. Despite whatever quarterback he's had, he's put up good numbers, and he's continues to demand targets. However, over the past couple weeks, hasn't had amazing performances, so you might be able to buy right now. And like I talked about earlier in this video, he's going against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are one of the 2 matchups that you want to target for receiver as of recently. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the team that allowed A.J. Brown his massive game where he blew it up. So they have been just allowing wide receiver ones to just smash. They're not able to cover. There's a huge mismatch this week for Chris Olave in coverage, so he should be able to smash. And this might be your last chance to buy him. Hopefully he goes out and blows it up this week, and he's got a pretty decent schedule for the rest of the year as well.
Yep. I am a huge Chris Olave fan. I traded for him in Dynasty, probably overpaid, but I don't care because I can have him forever. So next up, I have 2 sells for this week. One is going to be Joe Mixon. I know you're probably shocked. The 5 touchdown scorer himself. Well, that's exactly why. Coming into this week, Joe Mixon was the running back 17 on the year, which, I mean, is good. Don't get me wrong. But it's not great. It's not where you drafted him. He still wasn't returning his draft day value. So coming off a performance like the 5 touchdowns, getting that 55, that probably really inflated his value to your league mates who are probably like, oh my gosh, Joe Mixon is so awesome. And you could kind of sell him off of that hype. Also, another reason why I would consider it, his next 5 games are super, super juicy. So I get it. If you're still struggling to make the playoffs, you might not want to sell him because you really need him to help you get to the playoffs. But his playoff schedule is probably the worst in the league. He plays Tampa Bay, New England, and Buffalo. Probably 3 of the toughest run defenses there is. So it's not great, but if you have to hold him, I see why. Guys I would look for in trades would be, receivers would be like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, even though the Josh Allen injury news hasn't broke yet. I think he'll be fine. He might miss 1 game, but I think Stephon Diggs will be good as a whole on the year. DeAndre Hopkins. So really your upper echelon receivers, I would try to do a 1-for-1 swap with or something like that. If you could trade him for maybe a top 10 receiver, not top 10 receiver, top 10 running back-ish, and then like a wide receiver 2/3. So maybe a Ken Walker and another receiver that would start a team like Ken Walker and Alan Lazard, something like that. If you need the depth pieces for a large roster, that's something I would consider. My other sell is going to be DK Metcalf. So he hasn't had over 67 yards in a single game this year. No matter how good Geno Smith has looked, DK Metcalf still hasn't had that explosive game yet. Tyler Lockett has been the one that has been having all the blow-up games. He's been the better fantasy receiver this year. So DK Metcalf is rather touchdown dependent. He's still getting it done for a low-end wide receiver 2/high-end wide receiver 3 type range. He's still getting it done, but their schedule isn't that great. I mean, it's not insanely hard, but it's kind of average. So he's not going to have super good matchups to exploit. Some guys I would consider trading him for would be, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, guys in that range around the wide receiver 15 to 20-ish. If you could trade them straight up for that, I would. Maybe even a Diontae Johnson.
Tyler Lockett.
And dude, if you could do 1-for-1 swap for Tyler Lockett, I would be all in.
Yeah.
But
Amari Cooper.
I would consider 100%. I would definitely smash
if you could
on that
put somebody with him and get, Amari Cooper or even Olave, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yep. 100%. If you can get any top 15-ish, top 12 receiver right now that maybe has less name value, because DK Metcalf carries a lot of name value. Everybody knows who he is. He's a polarizing player, so I would try to cash in on that name. I don't really like his production profile of the season. He's really just a touchdown-dependent wide receiver 2, which is not something I really want for my fantasy team. So I would definitely consider trading him if you can. But that's going to be it for my sells and my buys this week.
Okay. Yeah. Again, for the sells, not must sells. Neither of these guys are must sells. They'll be decent for your team, especially Joe Mixon. Like, he's going to be a running back 1 rest of season. It's just we're capitalizing off of a big game here. So again, think about the cost. Run the tires. If you could package him and get a Saquon or get a CMC, obviously do that, right? Like, you want to capitalize on these big games, but don't sell just to sell. Don't hear what we're not saying. Yeah, same for DK Metcalf. Go for those guys we talked about. And those are our buys and sells for week 10. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers. That's our new goal. We really appreciate you guys for getting us to 300. Super appreciate it. You guys have supported us, and we really appreciate it. So hit like, hit subscribe. Thank you for watching. We've been the Fantasy Bros, and we are out.